Okay, so here we are.
Do you have a date?
It's the 29th of December of 1999. We're doing a little interview with Mom and Dad about their history, background, you know, whatever. So, we're going to start off with the Hudson family background. Dad's background of when you were born, and you're being videotaped now, yeah, sure, so smile nice. Okay, Dad, so what was your birth date?
My birthday was June the 7th, 1922, in Wood River, Illinois, on 3rd Street, in a little house. I'm trying to think of the name of the doctor.
Gillis.
Dr. Gillis delivered me at home.
Your home?
Really?
And I think
So when you say you were born on 3rd Street, you really were born on 3rd Street.
What was the address?
but I don't remember the address.
There's 3 houses.
It was a middle house. It was a middle house, or it was a 3rd house. I think,
And it's
on the
kind of
corner.
across the street from that old Alton Telegraph delivery
Yeah,
station.
pretty
right?
close to St. Bernard's.
Behind Tom Willie.
I think they gave my mom an aspirin. And
And how much did you weigh? She needed more than aspirin.
well, my dad said he wanted to have a baseball team, and he said he got the pitcher and the catcher, but he couldn't get the first base. But I think because I weighed about 11 pounds and 10
That's
ounces,
more like
almost
it.
12 pounds,
Oh,
and
12 pounds.
my mom was a small lady. I think that had a lot to do with getting the first base.
Yeah, there you go.
And
You almost weigh 12 pounds?
almost 12 pounds.
How much did
uh,
I weigh? You said I
Probably
did.
on the kitchen scales, who knows? But
Okay.
anyway, I
It
think
was,
he was a big boy.
Now,
Now your parent, I was going to
you had an older brother, right?
I had an older brother, Bernard, who was born November the 10th, 1917.
In St.
And he was born in St. Louis, over there near the Anheuser-Busch brewery in the German community.
On the south side.
South
They
side
lived
of
there
St.
then?
Louis.
They lived there at
They
that
lived
time?
there when my brother was born.
Why did they move to Wood River?
To start his new business, the
Which-
Elmo Electric
oh, the
Company.
electric.
He worked for the phone company. And
He worked the telephone, and he was a lineman
Lineman?
where he climbed the pole, and I think he was up there and he got a hold of some hot wires and he fell,
Oh.
and he lit between the sidewalk and the curb, and this kind of rejolted, and he had kind of like a circle on his leg where the electricity I think came out of his leg.
Oh my.
It came that close to being no Herald, but I mean that was.
And he was in the old St. John's Hospital.
The old St. John's Hospital for quite a while. But I think if you hit the sidewalk or the curb, you'd been a goner. Because the poles in
The
those days were
original.
rather high
But that was after Bernie was born.
after Bernie was born.
So why did he choose to start his business in Wood River instead of in where they were living?
I think he wanted to have his own business. That's why he called it the Elmo Electric Company for Illinois
in
and
Missouri.
Missouri. And he came over here when Standard Oil would just begin to boom.
Okay.
This was the
in Wood River.
fastest growing community.
And
Oh, I
he
see.
came over
State.
here,
Okay.
and he was right downtown Wood River.
Woodbury, Illinois. the
But he
fastest growing
wired,
place in the state.
he hired people, and he sold the Atwater Kent radio, and they sold so many Atwater Kent radio, they got to go to Philadelphia, my mom and dad,
That's
for a
right.
free trip.
There was a picture downstairs in the basement of that whole group that went on that trip.
Yeah,
as I
to
recall.
Philadelphia.
Was
And
your
my brother and I stayed here, and Mrs. Swan stayed with my brother and I.
How old were you then, about?
I was pretty young at that time. But I think our next door neighbor was named Harold
Oh.
Powell. I think I must have been named after Harold Powell. They didn't tell me this.
Now, you were obviously a smart guy. You went all the way through dental school. But I understand that the first days of school weren't quite as interested for you. You had kind of a hard time warming
In
up to
grade
the school
school?
experience, yeah.
Well, I think because I was so big, I was bigger than every
Danny.
kid in the neighborhood, and they thought that I was 5 years old, and they didn't have kindergarten then. They sent me to first grade, and I wasn't quite ready for the first grade, and I repeated the first grade over. They put me back a semester, but I'm thankful they put me back in the class I was in.
Stanley Goldberg.
Because Stanley Goldberg was my best friend, Phoebe Goldberg's son.
That was after you he was waiting for you when you went back a grade?
Well, I mean, they put me back
held
in
on
his
to your
grade, you know, and
But
I
didn't
had
you,
marvelous teachers.
but didn't you on your in school you like came home one day and you said you weren't going back or something like that?
Well, I think that that could have happened too.
That
I
was
wasn't
me.
I wasn't mature enough.
No. There was some story I remember being told.
I took Tom, dropped him off at kindergarten, and ran home.
Yeah, but this was a story about you hooking your sled on the
Sled.
back
Well,
of a
I was a little
car.
further along then
That was when he
in
was
school.
5.
I was a little older at that time. That's when we had some snow.
Well, like
and I
what
hooked
grade-
a
what
ride
grade?
over the noon hour. We had a half hour for lunch, and I grabbed a hold of the bumper, and the car was right behind me, and I went all the way to South Roxana.
On the way to St. Louis, right? I mean, it was like
I
that
got
road to
off,
St. Louis.
and I walked back, and I got back about 1:30, and my mom made me go back to school. I didn't want to go back to school. I was embarrassed, but she made me go back to school, which was right.
How old were you then, you think?
I think I was about 7 or 8, something like that.
So 7 or 8, you probably weighed, what, 200 pounds by then, I suppose.
Large.
I hope not.
Big guy.
But,
But when you say you got held back, you didn't start over a whole nother year. They had like
half a semester, I think I.
like
so it was
like
a
they
half, it was a
graduate-
half hole.
I still
Every-
graduated when
I
I
mean,
was 17, you know.
every high school class had like 2 graduations
Right,
graduations
in those
per
days.
year.
And I, instead of being in the
January,
June
June.
class
Yeah.
of 39, it put me back in the January class of 40.
Yeah.
And he was still only 17.
And I was still only 17 when I graduated,
I
but
was
because I was so
18.
big, they thought I was really ready for school. And I wasn't. And
So you haven't got anything on me putting my head on my desk my whole year of kindergarten because I wasn't ready. So there you go. So we come by this naturally.
but I think that like when you started kindergarten, Paul said you weren't ready for kindergarten. And we thought you knew all your numbers, you knew all your colors, and you got to school and you began to hang your head on your desk.
I didn't like
And you
board
weren't
games
ready
then
for
either.
school. And Paul was right, we were wrong, you know. And but Paul knew you better than we did. But I think that from then
You
on,
did all
they
right,
said we're going
buddy.
to watch Mark,
You did all right.
and they kept watching you, and you watched you clear up to high school, you know.
And he kept-
But they never did hold you back.
So what grade school
Tony
did you go
Motel
to?
one in the state of the year high school. I think.
That you came to get me to bring me back. You were
He
13.
repeated 12th grade.
So
But the old Washington
what grade
School,
you went to Washington School?
Washington School was right there on the corner of 6th Street and Ferguson, and that was you had to go down to the basement to go to the bathroom. It was an old-fashioned building.
And they tore that building down when we were still in school
Yeah,
around here. I
it-
mean,
it
that was still
used
part
for
of
a
the
long
River
time,
school system.
And the basement
until-
was used for their musical department, for the band, for all 3 schools.
When did you transition from Third over to Arena? You know, because you were, how old were you? Any idea?
From where?
Went from Third Street or where you were born to grandma.
I was only
lived
1
there.
year old when they moved over to Arena.
So that's 632 Arena, right?
632 Arena across from Marx's funeral home.
My namesake, right?
Yeah.
Mom denies it.
No way.
So was there always a funeral home there?
Yeah, that was always there, Marx's funeral home, but they weren't very busy in those days. Woodard was fairly young.
It was just like a
In the
house, wasn't
20s.
it? It was like a
That
house.
was a
at this time
house,
there.
and the funeral was, he was associated with Marx and Weber in Edwardsville.
Oh.
And Edwardsville that was our county seat, had lots of funerals. It was over 200 years old.
Yeah, so
Edwardsville.
people died.
Woodard
wrong.
was so young, they didn't have many funerals back in the 20s and 30s. And but I can remember my first grade teacher, Miss Kane Miller. She had a little black Sambo up on the board, a little Red Riding Hood, and she was a marvelous kindergarten teacher. And
Liked her so much you stayed next year's semester.
well, I think they found out my real age, and they felt like, you know,
So were you 4 when you went to kindergarten then?
5. That's
You-
supposed to be
Just
6.
five.
Just
From-
5.
From
Just
June
5.
till-
And I think they Miss Kane Miller was a tremendous teacher. She and Miss Martha Hammett. Remember Martha Hammett from the Christian Church?
I know that name.
She was my 2nd grade teacher, Martha Hammett.
Okay.
She was a
When things picked up for you in school, when you got into sports.
What's that, Mom?
what?
I just wanted to tell about when you got into sports, I think things picked up for you in school.
Oh yeah, I think because I got off on the wrong foot, school wasn't very exciting, you know.
till you got to what?
I mean,
high school
I
or
enjoyed,
junior
Woodward
high?
had good school, but I think I got off on the wrong foot.
How about junior high? Were you in sports?
Oh, yeah.
So when did you get engaged with sports?
Were you in sports? in
Junior high, junior high
Things
school,
picked
Lewis
up for
Clark.
you then, didn't they?
You had 4 years at Washington. Then Wood River School was the oldest school building in Wood River. And you had the 5th and 6th grade there at next to Presbyterian Church.
That's the one they tore down?
They tore that down.
They had the old bell.
They got the bell out front.
That's what we used to play with when we went to grandma's house, where they had the milk bottles outside and there's the whole thing.
So then what sport got you involved in sports in junior high?
I think basketball started in junior high. Walter Brown was the coach. He had my brother.
Well, your brother's a good athlete.
My brother was a good athlete, Bernie.
So he probably got you interested in sports.
Yeah,
didn't he?
Was he
I
one-
go watch him play all the time.
But he was like 3 or 4 years ahead of you, right?
4.5
4 and a
years
half
older, but he's 4 years ahead of me in school.
It's like Danny and I. Or Danny and Andy.
But it was,
He'd go watch him play. He'd had to look over the fence. He'd get in a tree at high school to watch his brother play high school football.
Is that right? Kind of like the Knothole gang.
well, my brother played football at Wood River High School. I was at Lewis Clark.
At the junior high.
And the basketball gym was in the Lincoln Gym on Wood River Avenue. There was no gym in the junior high school. And we played, and you didn't have a dressing room. You dressed in the kind of like a cloakroom of a class. And and they had a great big where they had the meals, and that was the basketball floor in the middle of all the classes. And after school, you went over there to practice. But Stanley Goldberg and I were about 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide.
Yeah.
And we felt like if, in those days they had standing guards. We felt if Walter Brown had put Stanley and I as standing guards, they'd have to run out of bounds to get around us.
So is that the position you played? What position did they play you when they played you?
Well, I think, we played East Dalton, played Hartford.
What position?
I think then I probably played forward or guard. And
Taller than him, you're
I
10.
wasn't real tall then. I was pretty heavy.
I see you have a Phoenix Firebird sweatshirt on, which is obviously your grandson Andy's
Right.
elementary school in
I'm very
Grand Forks,
proud
North
to have
Dakota.
that sweatshirt on.
But do you recollect what your team name was in junior high?
Junior high, I think they call them the Lewis Clark Explorers.
Oh.
Lewis Clark Explorers.
Famous today.
Lewis Clark was a fairly new school, and
Lewis and
At
Clark
that
were probably actually there at the time.
no, I mean Lewis and Clark was a fairly new building. The other Washington was old, Wood River School was old, but when you got to Lewis Clark, that was the 7th and 8th grade.
Can
Okay.
I ask some questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I mean, tell us some of your interesting stuff and things in the long run. What you
Speak
used
up,
to
Mom.
do. I
What?
want him to tell about, he's got a lot more interesting things to
But
tell
Stanley and
about
I,
stuff.
we put on plays at school.
How's that?
We
How do you do that?
we wrote our own plays. We were sponsored by Tony's Lousy Donuts, and we put on skits where the girl kicked the bucket, Rebecca. We write our own plays and we perform them before the whole school.
Well, that's pretty good
He's a
defensive
playwright.
ability.
Did you wear a wig
I
or
didn't know
something?
Yeah, I wore a wig
To be a
and
girl?
I played the girl part,
You're the girl
and
that
I
kicked the
put
bucket?
my foot in a bucket, and that was where I kicked the bucket. And but Stanley and I, we used to put on plays in the back at his house all the time, while we were growing up.
Did he live near you?
He was on Acton, 1 block over, but he was at our house half the time, and I was over at his house. half
It's
the
like
time.
our gang. I remember they put on plays all the time.
Yeah,
with
we
the
put
chief
on
and the-
plays, and we just had fun. We didn't even charge a small, something
His mom used to take you
for
places too, didn't
kids in
he?
the neighborhood to come and see our plays.
Really?
Didn't his
Yeah.
mom used to take you places?
His mother would take me to the Veiled Prophet in St. Louis. She was a Jewish lady from University City, and I didn't know anything about the Veiled Prophet, but she'd take me to St. Louis and let me be involved
What
and
do you-
watch the parade. And
The Real Prophet Parade?
You
Veiled
did the
Prophet Parade. But she was from University City, was her hometown.
So what brought them here?
What you were saying.
She came here and
Business.
had the store,
Business.
Phoebe Goldberg's Ladies Apparel.
Was that Phoebe?
Phoebe Goldberg.
I mean, that was Phoebe though,
That
right?
was Phoebe
So
Goldberg.
Phoebe was Stanley
She was the
Goldberg's
finest
mother.
Jewish lady I've ever known. Mrs. Goldberg. I never.
So
met
she
a
is
nicer
Stanley
lady.
Goldberg's mother
Oh,
and Larry Gold's grandmother.
Right. Right.
turn the oven off.
Okay. This plaything's kind of interesting. How do you? I mean, how you said you were sponsored by some donut
Yeah,
place?
we just made them up. 20 lousy donuts.
Oh, I see. You made a
20
I
lousy
gotcha.
donuts.
Okay, all right.
But that was
Lousy,
just.
lousy donuts.
But Stan and I'd write the script. We'd act out all the parts. Just Stan and I. We didn't have anybody else. Just Stanley and I. We drove his older sister Maxine crazy, and but he was a brilliant student, Stanley. He went on to Harvard and Harvard Law School and made straight A's all the way through Harvard School.
And he became a practicing lawyer in Chicago,
Right.
right?
Changed his name to Richards
Yeah.
in Chicago.
And then he's probably well retired by now. Is he still living?
I imagine he was the head of the trust department for the Sears and Roebuck Bank in Chicago.
His,
And
his sister, Larry Gold's mom, just died.
she just passed away,
I don't know if you
Bernine.
remember that.
That's the one who
Howard
drove
Gold.
crazy?
Huh?
Oh, that was the older.
Maxine, the older one, we kind of
I do know his
bothered
mom.
her.
I didn't know that.
Maxine was
Larry.
the older sister, and Bernine was the younger sister. He had an older brother, Lee Goldberg.
Tell about those great coaches you had in high school and stuff.
So then you went to, after Lewis and Clark, you got to high school. And you, of course, went to East Alton Wood River Community High School.
You know,
And you were the January class of 40. And what did you think about the high school experience?
well, to me, high school, I kind of woke up in high school as far as the studies, and my brother had got out of high school one night in January of '36, and I got in the next night from Lewis Clark, and we had an old Hudson car, and it started for my brother's birthday, but it didn't start for for his graduation. It wouldn't start for mine, so we walked out to the high school from about 1.25 miles, and I heard my dad mumbling all the way out to the graduation. But I was just, people come by and say, "Are you Bernie's brother?" And I say, "Yes, sir." And they smile, and every teacher I had at Wood River High, he had, and they asked me the same thing: "Is Bernie your brother?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And they smiled, and I knew I was getting the benefit of the doubt.
Because he was just a likable guy.
Now, he was very popular. He was captain of the football team in '35, and my dad would take my mom and I to see the football games, and I enjoyed watching. I played sandlot football, but my brother told me to quit playing sandlot football because you get hurt and you couldn't play in high school.
So did you play football in junior high?
No,
So your
I
first
played
time,
sandlot football.
The first time you got to play the football was in high school.
At high school.
And
James Spiller was my
now,
coach.
had you already done your was the Wood River pool already there? Were you doing the lifeguarding thing?
I was
by then?
a locker boy at the Wood River Pool during the Depression for my freshman, sophomore, junior year
Of high school.
of high school. And they'd have 150 guys apply, and they'd hire 3. And Mr. Merle Manley, mother-in-law, was our neighbor, Mrs. Lawrence, 2 doors down. My brother and I would play ball in the street, and my mom said anytime the ball goes up in her garden, knock on her door and ask permission to get the ball out of her garden. And we did. And she told her son-in-law that my brother and I were all right. We had her fooled.
So you got
Did your brother work at the pool too?
No, he didn't work at the pool. He did other jobs. He worked as a car hop at a soda fountain place.
Colonial Dairy.
Colonial Dairy. We both worked at Colonial Dairy.
Why? What'd you do there?
Was that a
I
high school?
was
Was
a
that a high
car
school
hop.
job too?
Pardon?
High school job?
I was right. I was pretty young when I worked at. You only had a 6-hole ice cream cabinet then. My brother dished the ice cream, and I waited on the cars. But the business wasn't as busy then as it was when they got the big fountain later, where they had so many cars, you know. But we were just kind of on the ground floor. But I worked for 25 cents an hour as a locker boy, and we never had a day off. You get after 2 months you begin to kind of pray for rain, because you
So
work
it's
7 days a
like
week, and you had free days on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I
What do you mean
enjoyed
you had free days?
Huh?
What do you mean you had free days?
free days. If they
Not
couldn't
for
afford the $2 for kids, $4 for adults, a season ticket, you come in swimming
Oh.
free
Oh, at the pool.
on Tuesday morning
At the
and
pool.
Thursday morning at the
Okay.
pool.
Wow.
And James Spiller was my boss. He was my freshman football coach. And he was very nice to me. And whatever he told me to do, I did. And he would always recommend me being reapplied or rehired for the next year. I never missed a day working there. But I enjoyed, I worked on so many, I mean, I had to open the locker, and so many kids were so little, they couldn't tie their shoes. And I would tie their shoes for them. And years later in the dental office, they'd say, you used to tie my shoes
Really?
in the swimming pool. And they still remembered me tying their shoes. But I don't think Standard Oil could have given a nicer gift to Wood River than that swimming pool.
This was the largest pool,
Southern
like the
Illinois.
largest pool in Illinois or whatever, and
No.
like
Yeah, but I
almost
meant
the whole block long
Every
and
kid
wide.
in town could swim. You know, whether they had to come to the free day, at $2 a year for, you know, a season ticket for children. And they could swim 7 days a week. Afternoon, they were open till 9 o'clock at night. You know, open at 1 o'clock for regular, then 9 to 11 for free days on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I'd get there early, he'd have me spray the disinfectant all over the girls' locker room, so they wouldn't get athlete's
So the
feet.
guys didn't get disinfected?
Well, we did the boys too.
Oh, I was gonna say.
But Mr. Spiller would have me do the girls' locker room,
Okay.
spray the disinfectant.
I remember Grandpa Hudson buying us boys season tickets
Yeah.
to the Wood River pool when we were kids.
Boy, they,
You let him do that or something, didn't you, Dad? Or he
yeah,
buy us
it
season
was,
tickets?
really, it was nice of him to do that.
So, what about, what's your recollection? Let's see, how old are you when the Depression hit?
7 and 8.
Well, I was born in 22 and the depression started in the early 30s, I think. I think that the stock market was 29, and I think the depression began up in the 30s.
So what's your recollection of that period of time?
Well, I remember my dad, business kept going downhill, and my dad was not a real good businessman, and he lost his business during the Depression. But he was a union electrician, and he went to work for Ivan Kramer downtown, electrical store that sold GE appliances and things. And then he worked on the dam in Alton. He was a foreman of all the dams in Alton.
So Grandpa had this business,
Electricians.
Elmo Electric Shop, from 20.
Until he lost it during the
But
Depression.
did you open it? Did you guys move over here the year you were born, or a few years before
About
that?
a year after I was about a year old, we moved over. He built the house on Lorena.
So in 23,
Right.
he
Business
moved
was good.
over here, and the business. He started the business.
He wired half the homes in Wood River.
So he moved to
He
Lorraine
was
in
born
23.
here.
Oh no,
Born in
you were born here.
22.
So when was Elmo Electric Shop probably open?
Probably 21 or
It was
something.
probably opened in the early 20s.
So 2021, and then you were
Yeah.
born here,
In Wood River in 22.
and then in 23 you moved over to the house in Arena.
Right,
And Grandpa ran the Elmo Electric Shop,
right.
and Uncle Bernie
Until
helped
30
him
years.
some, or was kind of, when he was old enough, kind of helped him there. And then he ran that business until 30 and sold radios. Did he also do wiring during that time too?
Yeah, they wired houses.
So he wired. He
He
ran
brought
this
Chauncey
electric.
Wegman over from St. Louis.
So
paid for his first union car.
it ran this electric shop, but what he was also doing was out there wiring homes and stuff. That was his
Right,
most of his livelihood
Right.
is selling that work in radios, I suspect.
right. But I think my dad was happier being the electrician and not the boss.
Yeah.
I can remember my brother saying when he worked under my dad on the Alton Dam, my dad didn't want to show any partiality, and he expected twice out of my brother Bernie than all the other electricians. And he told me that. And when they finished the Alton Dam, he went to Wentzville in Missouri and Clarksville, and I'd take him to the Alton Bridge about 5 o'clock
Uncle
in the
Bernie.
morning, Uncle Bernie, and he'd go over to Missouri and work all week over there. And he said it was such a relief not to be working under Dad, because Dad didn't want the other people to think he was showing partiality. But he got to work his last 12 years for Chauncey Wegman. And Chauncey Wegman,
Chauncey was the person he brought over from St.
St.
Louis to work
Louis.
for him at Elmo Electric.
and he started his business in back of his home.
And bought his, and didn't Grandpa buy his first union card or something like
Yeah,
that?
he signed him up for union, and he and Chauncey were the best of friends. And I think that Chauncey Wegman looked up to my dad, and I think even when he had some tight squeaks, money-wise, Dad would loan him money to help him. But he came back, and he did all the wiring for Paul Wooster, the best contractor in town. He wanted my dad,
But he was doing that and
the wiring.
But in the Depression, your dad would walk to Kramer Electric every day,
Yeah,
just,
every
just
day.
to see if there was a job,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes they just send him home.
He said if they didn't have work for him, he'd send Dad home. He didn't get any pay.
But then Mr. Wegman found out.
Heard that out. You know, he said, Elmer, you can work for me 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. You know, and he didn't do that, but but Chauncey Wegman was very good to my dad.
So then he went to work for Wegman,
Wegman Electric,
and then that was pretty much where he worked from the,
till he retired.
so he started to work for them in the mid-30s, early 30s?
No, he didn't work for them till, I'd say the 40s.
So, and he
Probably.
retired when?
I remember him working still.
Grandpa, oh yeah.
Yeah,
No.
he worked his last,
In the mid-60s?
In the 50s. I was old enough to remember Grandpa had a red truck come home for lunch on
was it
Saturday.
50s and 60s he was working for
I don't know,
Wegman?
I was pretty little, I guess.
I don't know the exact dates, but in
Right,
50s
late
and 60s, I think he was working for Chauncey Wegman. And
He had a big red truck with all the stuff in the back. He'd come home for lunch.
he broke in Joe Kessler. He told Chauncey, you'll be the best electrician you have. And
He ended up being the vice president.
he ended up being
of the
vice
company.
president of Wegman Electric.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Grandpa knew.
And but he knew, and he was very impressed by Joe's Christianity.
Okay.
Joe belonged to James Church as our next door neighbor. And
Next door neighbor.
now, our new neighbor,
Oh, the
Ninth
Baptist,
Street
the Baptist
Assembly.
Church, Assembly of God.
Assembly of God.
I forgot to ask you a couple questions before we got in this front part of this. So, we talked about Grandma and Grandpa living in St. Louis, and any idea how long they lived in St. Louis? How long they lived there and where they came from before that?
Well, they came from Mexico, Missouri. My mom was pretty young.
They were both lived in Mexico, Missouri.
They were both raised on small farms outside of Mexico, Missouri. And I never met my grandparents, their mom and dad. I met all their brothers and sisters.
Right.
I knew them.
So,
I don't remember any grandparents.
so they were in St. Louis, like 1917 was when Uncle Bernie was born,
Yeah.
and they were already there for several years. Do you have any idea? Do you know? Or
Well,
Her mom-
how long they were in St. Louis, I'm not sure the exact
You know, Mom?
time.
When'd they get married?
you know,
1916.
1916,
And how old was Grandma?
16 or
Well,
17.
16. Then she get permission to get married, but anyway,
so Grandma Hudson was.
the thing
Child
was,
bride, I'd say,
Gra-
16, 17 years old.
They
Gertrude?
started, wait a minute, they
Gert-
started this rural electrification and Grandpa got hired. And Grandpa said that these companies hired the farm boys because they knew how to work and, you know, taught them how to string telephone wires and stuff like that. And then I guess he got moved to St. Louis.
Oh, I see.
And I think he was
He
probably,
got hired in Mexico.
he was living there.
They moved him.
I think
I
Dad.
think he was living there before he went home.
They didn't get past the grade school, or junior high. I think they brought them home to work on the farm.
So
They
you
were,
don't know anything about
They
their
were
parents though, then, huh?
Didn't
they
know
were
anything.
married the day
Yeah,
after
17.
Christmas in 1916 and came, I don't know how they probably took a train back to, because they didn't have cars and probably then, and that was the first time Grandma had ever ridden on a streetcar and it made her sick. Riding
St.
on a
Louis?
streetcar in St. Louis and
I wonder where they lived in the south side of St. Louis.
We tried to go back and find
We
their
found
home,
the
and it was
area.
all taken out
by 44.
by I-44. When that went through, it wiped out all that area.
So they're from Mexico, Missouri, and let's see, they were born.
Grandpa was born in, she was born in 1899 and he was born in, I don't know, about 7 years earlier. I forget.
He was 7 years older than Mom.
1892.
1892.
1892, and,
December 2nd,
So
1892.
they were both born in Mexico, you think?
Yes, I'm pretty sure of that.
And do you have any? Do you know what their parents' names were?
well, I've got it down,
So
but
were
I
they
can't,
buried
I
or
can't
nothing?
call it.
Or wasn't there some
Over
story about
there.
grandma having to take care of kids, or like her?
Well, his mom and dad, his dad sort of walked out on him. And she had, I forget now, 5 or 6 kids. And they were on this farm and they were dirt poor, and her mom, when grandma was pretty young, got breast cancer and had surgery and died and stuff like that. And so those kids, the oldest brother, the one, Uncle Bill that we used to go visit,
Yeah, the Plymouth,
he
Minnesota
and his
agency.
wife lived on the farm, and the kids just kind of, grandma said they raised themselves and stuff like that. That's why she started cooking when she was, a little kid, and been doing it all her life.
So that's Grandma Hudson's mother died.
When grandma was pretty
Of breast
young,
cancer?
yeah.
How young you think?
And grandma,
So they were
Wow.
orphans then.
huh?
They became orphans then if the father left them.
Right. And he went out, and
All his brothers and sisters were very close.
the Uncle Ross from, lived in Dana Point, California. I don't remember when we went to Dana Point.
He was
and
a
saw
baby.
him. Well, he looked up where his dad had gone to and all that kind of stuff, and where his dad was buried and whatnot. And
Uncle Ross was
I
the
don't
baby,
know-
and
I
Uncle
don't know what the
Homer was next
problem
to
was,
him.
but that's what happened, and so, they had a pretty rough. Grandma told about once they wallpapered everything, and the stuff all dried, the paper all came off and stuff. And
But the brother was old enough that he was married, and he kind
the
of,
oldest brother,
And
Uncle
he
Bill,
ran- he
and
kinda
his
ran the
wife
household
lived
then.
it, and he is the one that inherited the farm. Remember, he drove us out there when we stopped to
farm?
visit him.
He was outside of
he just
Mexico.
had all his younger brothers and
What was his
sisters
name?
living there.
Bill
Grandma's,
Walker,
And
that was
he,
grandma's oldest brother.
oldest brother.
And
Well,
he-
did she have another brother went out the West Coast?
Fred, yeah.
Fred went to West
Went
Coast.
to Nevada and
I'll
was
get it.
never heard of until he died, and I guess he was a cowboy or something like that out there.
That was the
In
oldest boy.
Winnemucca,
Winnemucca?
and
There?
Winnemucca, Nevada.
I'm gonna try to call.
Huh.
So, and then how about so any idea what Grandpa's situation was like? When he was on a small farm, you said, right?
Yeah,
Well, I don't know the size of the farm, and I don't know anything about his folks, except that I remember Grandpa saying once to us that when his dad told him to do something, they did it, or something like that. I think,
Okay.
I think probably those are some of the relatives that Jan's got the picture of on the frame. Those 2 old ladies with their long dresses and stuff. But it's the same way with my family. I know much less about my dad's ancestry. I know a lot about his, the family was living when I was. But anyway,
Okay.
and I don't think we know much about. I found out more stuff just by asking Grandma things. She'd talk about stuff, that he didn't know anything about.
That's why we all say, where's the Hudson from? They're from Mexico.
That's right.
no, that's
And
all I
then
can
at
say.
school, he'd tell him he'd been to Mexico,
I went to the country of Mexico, and I just went,
And he always said that's why he never smoked, because
oh boy.
because Grandpa smoked the cigars in the closed car
Well,
when
they used to
they'd
take
be,
trips to Mexico.
when they'd be
And-
driving over
And
to
how
Mexico.
far is Mexico from St. Louis?
Couple hours.
Well, it's only
Now,
at Kingdom City.
Is where Westminster was.
You turn right at Kingdom
So by
City.
Fulton?
He probably took
Yeah,
off.
Fulton's the other way.
Fulton was left and Mexico was right.
Right.
on the same distance.
And just not far from
Okay.
Highway 70. And
Don't you remember?
And Jan's brothers went to Mexico, Missouri, the
Military
academy.
school.
Still there.
That's where Kit Bond went to
Well-known
school.
military school. It's a good one.
And that's what AP Green,
The AP Green, Kit
Factory,
Bond's grandpa.
Fire brick.
the brick factories from Mexico, Missouri.
Yeah,
You wanna hold 1 second?
they made the best fire brick in the world.
Okay. But agriculture was the base of both of their upbringings, right? They both run farms.
Do you remember seeing the building that Grandma's house was? They were storing hay in it, right? And it was all kind
Yeah.
of tilted, but the
Right.
only reason it was standing up because
The hay was in it.
It was full of bales of
But
hay,
you know
right?
what, that was good walnut wood, and that's why when the house either fell down or was torn down, Grandma got some pieces of that walnut and had the carpenter here, Stevens got that, you know, that whatnot shelf she had in her,
Oh, yeah?
in the living room, that was wood from the old homestead.
Wow.
Is that
It was
one of
a
the old
two-story
homestead
house.
down here?
I remember that.
Oh, you remember that?
What, do you have any idea what they farmed on these farms?
I have no idea.
Just regular stuff, probably
I mean-
corn, livestock, and had livestock, just like farms did back then. When my ancestors had farms, they had, in Iowa, they had.
So let's just run through Grandpa's brothers and sisters in terms of what their names are of who you remember, starting with the oldest one that, you know, and what they sort of did, or,
I think the oldest was Uncle Doc.
okay,
I thought Bill was. And what are you, oh, Grandpa.
Grandpa.
He said he was the oldest of 7 children.
Doc.
D.D.,
They call him Dee Dee, but I call him Uncle Doc.
Albert,
Dwight.
He
Sister
lived in
Clarence.
Vandalia, Missouri. Uncle Doc was mayor of Vandalia.
Bernard.
Had like a
Yeah, he
hardware,
died.
had a hardware store or
And
something.
that's who that, that's
Well,
why
it was
Grandpa
a-
said we shouldn't name
it-
Stephen Bernard.
It was the same.
I'm not going anywhere.
It's like a variety store. He sold wallpaper to back in
In Vandalia, so he moved from Mexico to Vandalia.
in Vandalia. He never had any children. Aunt May
He married though.
married, and Aunt May, they never had any children.
Okay.
There were
Um,
not many, the next generation, there weren't many children from those large
And Clarence,
families.
Uncle Clarence,
They never
was
did.
at a clothing store in Mexico. He was a very well dressed and very well groomed. Aunt Blondie was his wife.
Did he have children?
No children. And then he had an older brother, I think, called Albert. Uncle Albert. I didn't know him too well. He lived in the same hometown as Dr. Paul Pierce.
Which was what?
Our pediatrician.
Well, you're right, our pediatrician, right?
Your
Well, it
pediatrician.
might have been,
A
Voss is
a
around
Voss,
there. And the
a
first
Voss,
time I went
Missouri.
to Dr. Pierce with you kids and stuff, he said, well, I know Uncle Albert, he's got the farm next up.
But I didn't know Uncle. He was never
His
at the
mother
reunion
was
so
a
much.
Huddleston or whatever, anyway, that was a name for them.
Okay, did they have kids, do you know?
He had 2 boys I know of. Uncle Albert. At least 2
And
boys.
one night when you guys were all gone at the something and I had your 2 little boys there and trying to get them to sleep and the phone rang and somebody from Mexico called that was related to Uncle Albert and wanted this information about the Hudson family, that he was researching stuff and it
Somebody
was
else
so
was looking
funny.
it up, huh?
So that was just like a couple days ago? Or
Oh, no, no,
I mean,
no, a
when
couple
they were here
years
for a
or
month.
3
When the
years
flood.
ago.
During the
No, it was
flood.
before that, I
Even
think.
Before that, even?
But anyway, it was just, but
And
I
who
didn't,
called?
I didn't know. He was related to one of these other Hudson. But anyway, let's go on to more interesting stuff.
Okay, and then,
Well, that's as far
What-
back as you can go on the Hudson's then, huh?
is no brother, sister thing, don't know more about
He had,
that?
he had a sister named Sis.
She went to California and,
Yeah, married Frank Wayne.
and then there was
Had a boy.
one that married Jim Muir, remember?
Yeah, there was a lady who married
They had several children.
another sister that married Jim Muir in California. And
And we went to visit them, I mean, Grandma was excited for us
But he
to
had
be
2
able to go to
sisters.
California.
and at least 3 brothers.
And who, and Bernard died?
He had Bernard that died very, very young.
I think he had a ruptured appendix or something like that.
Bernard.
And
So that means he had 4 brothers.
And then
Or
Uncle,
4
and then Uncle Bernie died, so,
And they
so
named-
therefore, when you named Stephen Bernard, Grandpa was a little nervous about that because of the bad luck of it, or the.
Right.
No,
That's
But
true.
we
Didn't know
wanted
that.
to honor his brother somehow.
Yeah. That's true.
You going too bad? You going too good?
Bye.
He says,
Bye, partner.
You could have gone to see
I'm
a
staying.
good movie at
Okay.
7 o'clock.
What a good movie.
Carry on.
Okay, we're onward. Okay, so we've got, that's all we pretty much know about Grandpa's family as far back as we go, right?
Yeah, we don't know what their ancestry was or anything like
Do you hear from any of the Hudson relatives now that you
Not anymore. They're about the ones we knew
But
are
all
gone.
gone.
Those are the ones that lived in Mexico that were the
And
kind of
even
the
the ones that were
nuclear.
his cousins that he was close to that he played with over there when they were kids. I think the only one that might be left that we know of is the one that had the salvage yard. That they came to visit us when we
That
were
was
first
on
married
Mom's
out
side.
in California.
That was mom's side.
So when you went to visit, you go for the weekend or just for the day?
Yeah, I think we went,
Were these
On weekends.
Hudson family reunions when you'd go over there?
yeah,
Walkers.
Hudson Walker.
Oh, Walkers, right? That's right. His
Reunions.
grandma's name was what's her full
Walker.
name? Maiden name?
Gertrude,
Ethel Gertrude Walker.
Ethel Gertrude Walker was her.
And
given
Dad's grandpa's full name was
name. Elmer Morris Hudson.
Morris or Morrison?
Is it Morrison?
He's Morrison and Bernie's is Morris.
I guess it's
think, or
Morrison.
something like that.
Morris.
But anyway, I
Elmer
think maybe
Morrison.
the families were friends or something like that, you know.
Okay. So are these reunions a joint venture between
A
the
lot
two
of them,
things?
they were get-togethers.
Or are they more like community gatherings where a lot of people would come together?
It was mainly Walker and the
Well,
Hudsons.
sometimes in a certain area in those days, a lot of people were a family in the same
And all
community.
married
They
each other
didn't-
and
they
stuff
didn't
and all
move
that.
away as much.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the same way when.
The
we
Aunt
used to go
Bess
to
was my
Iowa.
mom's sister.
So, okay. So thank you for that catch up. To go back to the, I know Grandpa lost the business during the Depression. Do you remember as a child, you know, kind of I mean, Grandpa losing that store obviously was a big event, or was
Yeah.
not a very easy thing, I'm sure. You know, I mean, what was there sort of a sense of serious concern about things, or what was your sort of recollection of what that environment was like at that point?
Well, I didn't really realize there was a depression. Everybody was poor, and there wasn't any. They had the Standard Oil there, thank goodness. And the Standard Oil people worked, and that led to stability
Financial
of
stability
Wood
in the
River
community, yeah.
and the community. But my dad always worked as an electrician. My mom would bake cakes and sell cakes to our neighbors, and I would deliver the cakes for her, and she'd get 50 cents, I think, for the chocolate cake, and get $1 for the angel food because there's more eggs in the angel food cake. And but I didn't realize we were poor.
Grandpa never had.
You know, I never missed
Grandma
a
never
meal,
had to
or
work outside the
she
home.
never worked
or-
outside the home, and
Well, she did this.
Her sisters
Selling-
did and stuff
Oh,
in
yeah.
different factories over there in Mexico and stuff. But I
That's
mean,
true.
Grandpa, you know, Mom was always there.
So Wood River may not have been quite as affected by the Depression as significantly as like Mexico,
Oh,
maybe an
yeah.
agricultural environment
Oh,
that
yeah.
didn't have a shell or something like that to
Yeah.
kind of provide it more.
Standard
of a
Oil
base.
was,
Or Standard Oil.
a lot of people came down from Chicago and Little Italy, and Wood River was growing still, but I'm sure Wood River was set back by the.
ball.
Really?
I'm
So-
sure Wood River
okay.
was set back by the
Alright.
depression. I don't mean that
Sure,
things
right,
were
it was
booming,
difficult. Okay.
but
so,
that was the backbone of Wood River was
Can I
Standard
say
Oil.
something?
Sure.
About this business of like, and even in the same way with me, but the thing with us is being the babies, we were not the older ones that could
No.
contribute much to anything anyway, but parents did not always talk so much about conditions.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you just accepted them and you lived simply,
Mhm.
and we were very fortunate that we were able to keep going to school and stuff like that. But they never,
So that part of the
They never
routine
talked
as
about
a child
we're
is
not
fairly
gonna
uninterrupted.
We're not gonna have
I never
food
saw
on
my
the
mom
table.
cry until my brother and I were wrestling on the bed, and he tossed me out the window. I broke the window and lit in the driveway, and my mom thought I was hurt. I didn't get hurt at all, but they breaking that window, and when they didn't have the money to really fix that window, my mom just sat down and cried.
Now, how old
Yeah.
were you at that point, do you think?
Well, I wasn't too terribly old. That was in the 30s. I was maybe
It's like 10 or something
maybe
like that.
10. But my brother
Uncle Bernie
was,
threw you out the window, huh?
but we were wrestling, and he catapulted. I went right through the window, and that's the first time I'd ever seen my mom cry, and I knew that it really hurt her.
There's a lot of stress
You know.
that is sort of
Well,
there
that's
all the time.
right.
I mean, we
That's
felt
right.
terrible. That you know,
First time I ever saw Grandma mad was when we tore up her kitchen.
that's right. Mom had a temper. You know,
She didn't say nothing, she just bit her lip.
About bit it through. Okay, so we were at the point where you were just in high school and you were starting to get involved in football.
Yeah,
Time's
Right.
almost up.
He had motivation,
but
You've got till
Got
9
15
o'clock
minutes.
and
he had
that's
coach
it.
motivation,
But-
good coaches motivate.
And who is your football coaches and stuff that you
Well,
remember?
yeah, my freshman coach was Mr. Spiller, James Spiller,
Okay.
was my freshman football coach.
Tell
And,
some of the neat
And he would,
stories.
he was very nice to me, and I got to play end in football as a freshman, and we played other schools, and I was going to get taller and going to get bigger, and I wasn't so fat then, but it was football. Watching my brother play, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to play football at Wood River High, and I don't think I ever missed a practice. I never missed a day of school at Wood River High or a practice or.
Were you motivated not to miss school because you didn't want to miss practice?
I think the sports opened up school for me, made school much more attractive. Jim Wainwright, Dad was a boss. He come from 8th Street, and we walked to Wood River High School every day for 4 years. And it was about 1.5 miles or 1.25 miles, but it kind of woke you up on a cold morning. I mean, I think it was healthy for us. And I think in those days you had to bring your own lunch every day. And on Mondays you had to bring your towel, your socks and jock strap and stuff. You had to wash it at home and bring it to school. And I'd had a big bag on Mondays. And Russell Bell, one of the teachers, would take pictures sometimes you come into school. He says, "Here comes Huddy to school with his lunch." It looked like, looked like I had about 12 sandwiches in his bag. I had a lunch in there, but I ate lunch downstairs in the cafeteria every day. We had benches we sat on, and the faculty ate in the cafeteria, but I couldn't afford to eat at the school, and they didn't have the setup they had then, like they have now. But we didn't think. My mom would fix the lunch, and it was a very delightful lunch. And
Mickey takes her lunch to school every day.
A lot of the
Yeah,
social life of the community revolved around high school
sure.
games.
Well, the
high
It
school
was
was,
much different back then. in
I
a
thought
small
Wood River High School
town,
was something really special,
And
for me.
Well, wasn't there some coaches that told you about going to college and stuff if you?
Well, Hal Barton was my brother's coach, and I think that he was the athletic director when I was at high school. And the things he couldn't do for Bernie, he tried to do for me. And he went out of his way to be nice to me. And then I ran to Burkholz, the football coach, when I was a sophomore.
Was he new to Wood River High then?
He came when I was a freshman. And when I was a sophomore, Dan Vineyard was the center on the football team. And Burkholz, he said, "You're too slow to play in. You're going to play center." And I said, "Yes, sir." And I sat on that bench, and then I didn't get to play one down when I was a sophomore. I never missed one practice, and I never missed. I got to travel with the team, but Liz Astroff was our captain, and was a good captain. He went on and played at Illinois, University of Illinois, and but he had a big influence on me. Burkholz did.
What was his full name?
Victor Burkholz.
Vic Burkholz.
Vic Burkholz, but was always coach. Always called him coach.
Some interesting things.
But he he went out of his way to help me.
When did they start letting you play?
But when I was a junior, I moved in at center, and they never moved me out of center, and that was 1938 when I was a junior, and I got to play every game, and I began to feel better about the position, and Burkholz really worked with me and helped me a lot, And my senior year, Burkholz was behind me 100%. He lived on Acton, and we lived on Lorena,
One block apart.
and I would ride home with him, and he talked to me about football all the time, and he wrote letters to Northwestern on my behalf. He knew the line coach Bert Ingerson, related to your mom, and Hal Barton knew Dutch Lombard the basketball coach who was assistant football. And they both wrote letters. And I think when you're 17 years old, you need all the help you can get, you know, and getting a scholarship. But my grades kept getting better. You know, I never missed school, and I took football too serious. I'd go to bed at 10 o'clock every night. I wouldn't date girls in football season. And I took it too seriously.
No.
But I felt like that was the only way I had to go to college.
So what were you gonna say,
Seriously,
Mom?
I forgot. Oh, well, did they send scouts? I mean, how
Oh,
come
yeah,
you
they-
were even offered?
Oh, they-
You know, somebody must have seen you play well.
They
or
sent
something,
scout,
but they
this
would
Pat
even offer
Harmon who
you a
wrote for
scholarship,
the
right?
Champaign
Oh.
Gazette came to the Belleville game, and he was watching me for the All-State team, and I ended up on the pitching mound. They play at the old baseball
Yeah.
park in Belleville, and Joe Astroff was the kicker, and I sent the ball straight back to him, but it went over his head. I was on the pitching mound. I was up about that high, and the only bad pass I made at center in 2 years. And here was this man there looking for the All-State, and but I think it was letters from Burkholz, and he knew the coach in Belleville real well, and I think you have to have those people on your side before you get any recognition, you know. And
Well, how did Missouri? Who they know at Missouri? Missouri recruited you too, right?
yeah, Missouri wanted me to come and play. I was offered a scholarship in Missouri, but Cobb Consul Bernie's class was playing at Missouri, and he played the same time as Paul Chrisman,
Uh-huh.
and we went over. My dad wanted me to go to Missouri,
You
but they
went
didn't have a
visit
dental
You
school.
visit the school?
We went to school, visited the
Didn't they have a
school.
small stadium too,
Small, you know, it had about 18,000 seating capacity.
as opposed to Northwestern that had,
Had about 45.
so it's like a much
Nice
different.
stadium.
They're in the Big Ten.
And the Big Ten was much
Supposed to
more.
maybe 8.
And my brother had gone to Champaign for 3 years, and he advised me the Big Ten, you know, would be a much better.
But he didn't play football there. He just went
No.
to school there.
He hurt
So-
his knee his senior year when he
of high school.
in high school.
So what about? But you know, we know you were a serious athlete. You played basketball.
Yeah, I
And you
tried
were
to
the
play
center
basketball.
on the basketball team. Or-
Yeah,
And weren't you an all-state basketball player?
no.
You're more of a journeyman basketball
Well,
player.
the junior year, especially when Cotton Stark was a captain, I went to state with the team. I played the junior varsity with John Kessler and Irvin Merv Hendricks.
Well, when did you make that basket that
Yeah, what's the best story about your basketball?
That was when I was a senior.
Were they put you in at the end or something?
No, I played the whole game against Andy Phillip, an all-stater from Granite City.
Yeah, well, what did you do?
Well, the score was something like 19-20.
They didn't score much.
You know, they didn't score
Big
much.
defensive.
They did pass the ball forever, didn't
But
they?
Wood River and just around Christmas time, and Wood River was 6-0, and Granite City was 6-0, and we played Granite City at Wood River in the old gym, and they had so many people there, and they filled up the whole auditorium, the whole balcony, all the stands. They were in the hallways. You could hardly get on the floor, you know, from the locker room, and.
Was Grandpa there? Did he come to
Yeah,
work?
I think he was there that night, and
Okay.
Go on.
but he, the game was so close, and mainly I was a rebounder, and they give me the ball, and I try to score underneath, and this time the ball is the last minute of the game. We were 1 point down, and they gave me the ball out of bounds, and I was almost at the mid-court. And usually I didn't see my open, and I took like a two-handed shot, you know, not one, but two-handed, and went way up and went right through the hoop. I think it had gone through, Summers would have killed me. But it went through. We were ahead by 1 point, and here comes Andy Phillip driving down, less than 20 seconds to go in the game, and he makes a desperate and hits the rim and bounds off, and I got the ball and went under the bench with the ball, you know, out of bounds, and the game was over, and the people poured out of the stands, and I couldn't get up off the floor.
You were the hero.
It was, And they wrote that up in the paper pretty big, that my shot won the game.
That was when you were a senior, right?
I was a senior
What
then.
was your most memorable football game?
I think every game, being captain, and I got to know all the officials. There was a man from East St. Louis who was a head linesman that was so nice to me. He always talked to me, and it was such an honor to me to be captain of the football team, be elected by my teammates.
When you were a senior?
When I was a senior.
Plus, you got to walk the Harvest Queen down then.
Huh?
You got to walk the Harvest Queen
Yeah,
down.
that's true. That was an honor.
Too. Sure.
It certainly was an honor. Cute looking outfit,
Go get your brother, please.
but it.
I need him in here.
But I think I can't point out one game.
You went to state though. Did those teams go? Who was the football coach all through your time when
Burkholz,
Burkholz was? And who was your basketball coach?
Chick Summers.
Chick Summers, who Coach Summers was also had your sons in high school too.
Yeah.
Did you ever have him, Paul? I had him as a social studies teacher in his last year before he retired when I was a sophomore.
He was remarkable. He would coach the junior varsity, and then come out and coach the varsity. And if you did well the junior varsity, you got the dress for the varsity. But I got to go to the state with him, and when Woodward didn't have the best team around here, and Woodward had never been to state before in 37, 38, and but just to go to Champaign was just kind of like a thrill of a lifetime to get to go up to Champaign.
And how did you do at state?
Well, they were picked to lose every game. They beat Moline the first game. Half the team had the flu. A guy named Dan Harmon was so sick with the flu he couldn't even make the trip. Half the team had the flu. Burkholz was the trainer, and he gave the guys enemas,
Clean them
flushed
out.
them out. And I was holding the bag, and I didn't have any flu. And they flushed them out. And Woodward took the floor. They looked like white ghosts. I'm thinking they'd open their mouth, they'd have whistled Dixie. You know, they were so.
Did you win?
They beat Moline the first game. And then the second game, they played Martin Cicero and had an all-state center called Parker. He went bowling the night before. He dropped the bowling ball and broke his big toe. He tried to hobble up and down the floor with a broken. And Woodward, I think, kept trying to step on his toe. I mean, and they beat. So that there's only 4 teams left. Then, and then they played Rockford.
So did you beat that team?
You beat that team.
So you won 2 games.
They won 2 games. You know, I didn't get to play much in either one.
The state was 16. It was the Sweet 16.
Sweet 16.
They made 8, and then
So you got the first game was 8, and then the next game was 4. So they
Right.
got on to 4, and they played Rockford, and they were playing real close. And Joe Astroff was our best guard. He took their star, Stan Stasica, an all-state football player, all-state, and he had 3 fouls. You only had 4 fouls in those days, and you were out. And Stan Stasica had 3 on him. Joe had 3 just before the half, and they were real close. They were tied up, and Stasica took the ball off the backboard and ran right over it. And Joe was just standing like this. He ran right over, and they called a foul on Joe. And he went on and scored about 15 more points and beat Woodward. I got in that game,
What, Mel?
and
Was that the one you said to have the most fouls in the
I
short
set a
time?
state record. I made 4 fouls in 3 minutes.
Guarding this real good.
I was guarding a player, and I went up and I tipped the ball away from him, and they said foul. And I went up again, I knocked the ball away from him, and called foul. And this was the old Huff Gym, Champaign. And the next 2 times, they had these wires in back of the basket. I had this player up in the wires. He was in these. I hit him pretty good the last 2 times. And I was.
So you fouled out?
I fouled out in 3 minutes.
Well, he was tired of these cheap fouls, so he decided he's going to get his money's worth.
The last 2 I really fouled. And Summers wouldn't even speak to me. And Burkholz comes down at the end of the bench. And he says, Huddy, I don't know about next year in basketball, but next year you ought to have a whale of a football season. And I smiled, and Summers didn't want you smiling when you were losing.
So good humor at that moment was a good thing.
But they were loose.
But there
Yes,
was
yes,
summer,
Mom.
there was Burkholz.
Mom's got something to
We
add here.
spend the last 7 minutes here talking about how lucky I was to marry this wonderful
Oh.
man because that's 9 o'clock is the end of everything.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it
No, it
is,
isn't.
honey.
No.
I told you
No.
you had 1 hour and that was it.
No, we're gonna do a little more than
No
this.
way. I
Well,
got
we gotta wrap
things
up the
to
Hudson,
do
we
out
gotta get
here.
our-
We
I
haven't
got
got to the
things to do
hardbacks
out
yet.
We haven't even gotten
No,
to
no, no,
college
no.
yet.
I
We haven't
want-
got to college yet. I want to hear a little more about the college time.
Well,
We'll do
tell him
this.
about,
Well,
he
I'm
said,
going to be excused.
he said
okay?
somebody didn't want to go to Missouri because they didn't have a dental school. So he must have had some idea about being a dentist when he was in high school.
Yeah, I wanted to
Oh,
be.
yeah,
I wanted to go to
me
dental
too.
school when I was in high because of Walt Whittoff.
Yeah,
He
Walt
was,
Whittoff
he was
was,
my
was-
dentist,
he was her dentist and the one that
and he was the lifeguard at the Whittier swimming pool, and he was on the high school board, and he had a lot of influence on me. And he said, "We need dentists." And,
Hey,
you know,
will you guys be careful?
and he was very nice to me.
and so you went to Northwestern. So what was that experience like?
I appreciate
Well,
this.
I'd never been on a train in my life till I went up to
Honey.
visit Northwestern.
You what?
I'd never been on a train. I was such a small town boy,
Would you fellas do me a
and
favor? Get out of
But did
here.
you visit Northwestern before you went there?
yeah, I visited the campus. And Evanston, the campus right there, you know, I thought, boy, what a beautiful campus. You walk along Lake Michigan to some of your classes.
Before you graduated, they sent you a letter and offered you a
Well,
scholarship.
I was out of school. I graduated in January of '40, and this was they invited me to come up while school was in session. You know.
So
And,
what'd you do after you graduated high school? Because you didn't start till the following fall? Or you
Well,
just went
Hal
all
Barton
summer?
called Punk Woods from the Glass Works and said, "This boy's going to Northwestern. He needs a scholarship."
Oh, that's when you walked. Oh, okay.
And he said he's got a scholarship to Northwestern, but he needs a job.
So that's when you worked the rest of that, from January till
Yeah, I worked from January up
Till next fall, huh?
till fall
almost a year. You
at the
worked
machine shop. I wore out more brooms.
And that's when you played softball
I
stuff?
played
with
softball with the Glassworks,
With
that
those-
team down the
With that
basement.
team that had 2 pro players.
Yeah, Joe Astroff and Don Linhart were on that team, and but Punk Wood was
Okay.
the personnel director, and he was a former coach, and Hal Barton knew him.